Welcome back to the last book for 2024. For the rest of the year, we are going to be doing a roundup of all of the books I've read, so keep an eye out for that coming tomorrow. But kicking things off with the last book of 2024, here we are. This was my 196th witchy book. I read a lot of them this year. I didn't know that my goal should be 200 books just for this channel, but honestly, reading 4 more might not have been that hard. So anyways, we'll talk about that later. But yeah, 196. Let's talk about Discover Your Master Chakra, Reveal the Source of Your Spiritual Gifts by Stephanie S. Larsen. So this book is definitely a unique take on the chakras. So instead of literally every other book that has ever been written about the chakras, where you're focusing on balancing all 7, this doesn't do that. It does the opposite. So instead, you're supposed to have like 1 or 2 that are like your main thing. They're not actually referred to really as the chakras. They're referred to in their colors. So like red, orange, yellow, and so on. And you figure out which one is like your main one off of like, I think it was like a 5-question quiz. And honestly, the quiz is pretty easy to guess. And like, if you want to sway the answers, it's really easy to do because there's 7 answers and they go in the exact order every single time. Like, it's not mixed and matched. It's number 1's always going to be what you're going to assume red is, and orange and yellow, and it just goes through all of the quote-unquote chakras for the 5 questions, and then you're supposed to go through, read all of the sections, and yeah. So I gave this a 1 star, and honestly, if the author happens to be watching this and you've made it to this point, you dropped your own score, because I had this sitting at a 3 because I was like, it's weird, but it's not like that bad. It was like a 2 to a 3. It was an iffy. I was tempted to just be nice because if you're new to the channel, I have a ranging for 3 where we have the good, the bad, and the meh. It was going to be in the bad, but it was still going to be a 3. And then I get to the freaking reviews. This is one of the things as a reviewer, as an author, as like a general person with an IQ higher than 10, you should know this. This is industry standard. Indie published, trad published, every freaking, I'm pretty sure even fanfic has this rule, to be honest. Like, every type of writer, author, person knows. And honestly, I'm sure it's going to apply to the other creative fields. But you, as the creator, do not enter and argue with people in the reviews. Reviews are for the consumer. They are for your client. They are for your reader. It is for you to ghost and lurk and find out things, but it is not for you to enter. You are supposed to be the invisible man, learning things and being like, ah, wow, my community did not like that. Maybe I should learn from this. And that's it. That is as far as it goes. You, at most, might get away with acknowledging the good ones. To be like, ah, thanks, man. I'm glad you enjoyed my content. Cool, yeah. But even that's like a little tacky. It's like, it's one of those, like, again, you're entering into review spaces. It's different if like your like reader like reaches out to you directly, or like they meet you at like a conference or whatever and they're like, oh my god, I loved your work. You're like, oh my god, thank you. That's different. That's not what we're talking about. This is the author actively hunting out the reviews and arguing with the reviewer. And it's like, what are you doing? No. Instantly, you dropped to a 1 star at that point. This author has such a fragile ego. And it's like, dude, I have few authors that I'm like, I will absolutely not touch anything from you. And like, if you've been on the channel for a while, if you've been here this year, you know that like, I do not like Cara Dwayne Greenleaf. She's not an author I like. To be honest, half the time, I'm not even sure it's a real person. It could just be a ghost name. But like, at this point, this author in comparison, you're making Greenleaf look like a good person. Because like, this author is in the reviews fighting like it is the Hunger Games to prove that she is right. And you know how you can know that she's right? You can pay her more money and then she'll prove that she's right. And that's like, what? Yeah. If you think the quiz that's 5 questions long and very easy to guess, because again, the ones are always going to be the red, 2s are always going to be orange, so on and so forth for 5 questions. If you're like, wow, that really actually didn't help at all. I felt like and like it's politely done too, of like, hey, I personally feel like this quiz was a little bit short, really wasn't enough to like get a true answer. This author is just in here being like, well, you're just an idiot and you need to pay me more money and I can tell you. And based off of your comment, I know that you're like this one. I think the one was like a yellow or something. And it's like, wow, dude, you need to go get therapy. You need to go touch grass. Like, you should not be in the review space. That is not for you at all. You need to take a step back. This is not for you. This is a reflection for future work. If you redo this in like 10 years, if you get your publisher to be like, hey, let's do a revised like 10-year edition, you take these notes and you redo it. And you're like, oh yeah, okay, going forward, I should make that better. That's it. That's the only thing you should be doing. You should not be telling people to pay you $45 to learn from a quiz that was in your book that was so bad, they have to now pay you. And like, if the people bought this book, they're paying you like, what, 20 bucks or something for your book. And then they're supposed to pay you $45 to still get an answer that they didn't get from your book. How egotistical. So like the fact that the author is acting like this in the reviews, instantly, it doesn't matter if it was the greatest book ever written. I hate you. Like, you were just author to author. You need to go get therapy. You need to work through your stuff because the review space is not for you at all. It is completely not for you. The only time really is if you hand it to like beta readers and alpha readers. And even then, they're there to critique your work. If you can't handle any level of critique, I know that my work is not that good. I know that like there are much better written books than mine. I also know there's a lot worse written than mine. And I'm good sitting in that middle. Like I'm good with that. But like, you know, I have had people tear apart my work, whether it's my videos or my books. I've had people tear it apart. And you know what? I don't argue with the person because like ultimately it goes nowhere, especially online. Like you are entering into the space for readers. You are not the audience. Like you are the author. The audience, they're going to want to talk to other people, not the author arguing with you. Like, of course you're going to think your book is the best thing ever written. Most authors do. Most authors are going to be like, yeah, I did this. It's good. I put a lot of hours into this thing, dude. But like at the end of the day, you got to acknowledge review spaces are not for authors. And when you enter it and you go into battle mode to argue with people who didn't like your book, it looks so tacky. It proves that you have such a fragile ego, that your work is actually really weak, that if your work cannot stand on its own and be good, that's a problem. And like, it just has to be what it is. Do better next time. But the fact that the author is arguing so hard with the reviewers, instantly no. And again, pushing to buy her telling you your thing because her 5-question quiz sucked. What even planet are you on? So that's like the first thing with this book. It's definitely my biggest issue with this book. Now, in the book itself, you know, there's a lot of things that, again, before I had read that, I was like, I don't know, I guess we could cut some slack, I guess. But like, also, this is one of those things where like, I kind of have to sit and really analyze, because I have read, I think, more witchcraft books than the average person. I'm sure there's more people out there who have read way more than I have, for sure. But I also will say I think I've read more than most people. Again, this is 196 for this year. I've read a lot. So like, that in mind, you see the things of like cultural appropriation, and it's like, where is the line of appreciation and appropriation? This kind of feels like appropriation because the chakra system is part of a different cultural whole deal. It's a whole thing. The chakras have been adopted into a lot of different belief systems, but ultimately it does have a root. Like, it comes from a specific belief system, and like, if you dive deep, it goes really deep if you want it to. Most of us don't. Most of us stick with the traditional 7. We kind of learn the names and like the basics, and we're good with that, and that's fine. And like, people will alter them a little bit, and will adjust it a little bit, but like, you have the core things still there. You talk about the symbol, you talk about where it came from, you talk about these things, and you keep that in the back of your theory at all times. Again, I've read quite a few books this year on the chakras, so it's like, there are some that really do a good job with this, and this book feels like a cultural appropriation of them, because there is very little mention of what the chakras are, where they came from, the basics from where it originated, because again, that kind of matters. It feels a little appropriative, not gonna lie, because like, you're taking the system and changing it, and you're changing it substantially, and not giving credit where credit's due to where it originated. And there, of course, no surprise at all. There are no sources. Why would we source? Where are you getting your information? And the author has argued about that in the reviews. So again, if you're listening to this, Miss Stephanie, you need to put your sources in your books. That's kind of standard in this community. It's not completely mandatory, but it is standard. And if people are questioning things, if you're going way off the beaten path, as you do in this book, like, you need to source, where is this coming from? Where did you learn this? Because if it's a different system, intriguing. Who started that? Why did they do this? Why did they change things? Why are the chakra names all different? Because it doesn't go with like the English version of the word. Because I could see, the traditional name is sometimes hard to pronounce. And so if you go with like, and I don't know if they do it in other languages, because I'm just a baby starter in Spanish, but I don't know about other languages around the world, if the chakra names transfer, or if they do something like what we do in English, where they get English names. Root, sacral, solar, throat. Like, we add our word to make it easy to remember. Small changes, right? But this, just calling it by the color, have not come across that in any other book. And because you don't list your sources, I don't know where you got that from. I don't know where you got the system from. And a lot of the stuff, it's like, I genuinely don't know how you got to the answers that you did for the chakras. But if you even so much as, again, if you are really bored, you should read through the Goodreads reviews of this book, because the author has such a fragile ego, and you read through it and you're like, wow. And like, who knows? Maybe the author's gonna come here, do the same thing on my video, to which I just will have to reply with like a laughing emoji, because it's like, dude, you are proving my point completely. Again, review spaces are not for you. But like, the fact that this author drastically changes the chakras, again, names completely different, and that you could kind of be like, okay, it's a little weird, but whatever. But then on top of that, like, it's sort of like she pigeonholed every single one, but not necessarily in a traditional way. And like, some of them have been changed. I think Cindy Dale is one that has changed the chakras a bit. She gives homage to where it starts. Like, one of her things, I'm pretty sure it's her. I'm so sorry if it's wrong. I'm pretty confident it was Cindy. But whoever it was, I talked about it earlier this year. They changed the ages associated to the chakras, where it's like, traditionally it's like I don't know, like 1 to 6 is the root chakra awakens. And then in hers, again, Cindy's, would be like, I don't know, 1 to 6 months or something. I could have that completely and utterly wrong, but you get the idea. And it's like, there's what it traditionally is and what the new author has decided it is. Stephanie doesn't do that at all. And so like what the chakras get pigeonholed into is weird. And like it kind of fits, but it's like so blinded for every other facet of the chakra. And again, it's still weird because this is the only book I have ever come across for the chakras saying you only have one and that you should only focus on one. Because like on page 306, she literally says, you don't have to be all the chakras. You get to be one. That's not consensus at all. In fact, it's probably one of the wrongest things you could say about the chakras, because no, you don't have to be they are you. They are you. You have all 7 chakras within you. You should work on balancing them, as has been done for thousands of years. Like, I can't remember the exact timeline. I swear it's at least 2,500 years the chakra system has existed. And like, it's a pretty continuous line of existence. Eastern beliefs, which is where the chakras come from, they aren't as disrupted as the West. You know, European indigenous cultures, obliterated. Like, we are scrambling for a few scraps of information on our old tribes here. Same in North America. Like, where it got colonized, it got obliterated, right? And so it's really hard to track it down. Some of the Eastern things did not have that happen as much. Chakras is one of those, where it's like, it's kind of like Buddhism. It's kind of continued. I'm sure it's changed over the years, but like, kind of the core of it is still there, you know? It's been going on for a long time. And so for you to just waltz on in and be like, nah, all these centuries of this belief, they're wrong. No sources as to why, just I said so. And if you don't list your sources, it isn't I said so. The author in one of the reviews said that. She's like, I'm not... Seriously, the author, it's just, you can tell they are so insecure. Whether or not the author actually is like completely aware of how insecure they're coming off, I don't know. They might think they're just defending for their life. They think they're like, again, they're like in the Hunger Games fighting it out in these reviews. And it's like, dude, you are like, you just don't even realize how much of a laughingstock you're making yourself. Because again, the thing of, you don't have to be all the chakras, you get to just be one. It's like, no, actually, you have them all. And one of the books I did, I think it was earlier this year, the chakras and like the vagus nerve, literally goes into the science of that, where the chakra system lines up with different points on your spine that control certain parts of your body that, oh my God, line up to the chakras. Like, where that chakra, like what it controls, pretty much lines up with that nerve and like your spine in general. Like that area of your spine typically controls that area of your body. And so it's just like, no, dude, you have all the chakras. You should work on all of them. When they're out of balance, it's not good, you know? And like, sure, you could argue that like certain times in your life, you're going to be out of one more than the other. And there's arguments of like, you have to build up from the root. And then others are like, oh, you could work top down. But never at any point is it like, nah, you just pick a random one. You're going to pick heart chakra and that's it. Just F all the other ones. That doesn't happen. That is not how the chakras work. And that's what makes it feel appropriative, where there is no acknowledgement really throughout of like, hey, this is very non-traditional. Traditionally, it is this way. I do it this way. Or I've learned it this way. There's none of that. It's presented as fact. And again, no sources. So it's probably just made up by the author, which is fine. We all do that. But also, again, the chakras is one of those things where it's had a pretty continuous existence for a very long time, and it comes from a very different culture. It's one of those things that we've kind of borrowed from Eastern beliefs and brought it into the West. And we just are ignoring the rich, deep history and like the lore of the chakras for whatever this book is. It's really, I mean, the author goes off on some seriously random tangents with it, and like also is a Snowden like apologist. Like, I don't know what universe you live in where you view him as like, first of all, it like out of all of the millions and billions of people who have lived on this planet, that's the example you picked. Wow, yikes. Also, it's giving, would you be one of the insurrectionists? You know, it's like, are you going down that pipeline? Is that where you're from? Because if so, extra oops, yikes. Never going near you again. 10-foot pole situation. Because like, again, why is that your example? It was in, I want to say it was yellow for Snowden. And I'm like, what are you doing? Why are we going down this rabbit hole? This is wild. And it was kind of like, I had my husband read through it too, because I was like, I don't know how I'm supposed to feel about this book. Like this was before I read the reviews too. So again, I was trying to spin it in like a positive way. But even he was like, this is almost like encouraging like sociopaths, and like it's really not good and not accurate to the chakra system either. It kind of is, but really isn't, and goes off on tangents again and like pigeonholes who you're supposed to be. And it's bad, really. This is obviously a very, very ranty review. So who do I recommend this book to? The only people I can genuinely see potentially liking this book. And I have met a few of them. They might appreciate it. If you are one of these people that is obsessed with personality quizzes, you might like this book. Because we all know the personality quizzes are only like kind of accurate. And like, you don't have a lot of faith and belief behind a lot of them. You know, there's some that are like more heavily studied by psychology and stuff. But like, for the most part, we're talking like the BuzzFeed kind of quizzes, you know, the old Facebook quizzes that you do, which I think they still do them, because I swear I have an aunt-in-law who does them on the regular that just floods my feed. But like, you know, the people who are just like obsessed with the quizzes to learn about themselves, like especially back in the day when you would get magazines and such, and you would go through and you would answer the things to be like, who is my celebrity crush? And like, what is my lip balm color? Like, those quizzes, those people that love those, they thrive on those. This is your book. Because like, sure, you realize it's pretty superficial. It's not super deep. And like, if it brings you joy, awesome. If you are seriously looking into the chakras, this is not a book. Just don't even go near this book. There are better ones out there. Like, there are so many better ones out there. So there's actually a book, if you are wanting to get started on the chakras for real, like actually diving deep, there is a very good book. Obviously, I mentioned it earlier. The first one would be Chakras and the Vagus Nerve. So good. The next one, that is definitely, it's a lot to a book. And it's like, it was one of my must-haves if you want to learn about the chakras. I talked about it earlier this year, was Wheels of Life, the classic guide to the chakra system. And I don't know how to say the author's name. It's like, it's something Judith. A Judith. But that one definitely has a lot of good information. But even, like, again, Cindy Dale has some good ones. Really, honestly, at this point, any of them would be better than this book. Because it's not about the chakras. It's about her weird color personality quiz. That's, like, vaguely kinda inspired by the chakras. It's just, it's appropriated the concept of the chakras and just to really, really lean in to the trendy tones. It just colonized the concept and just obliterated the original meaning and made it into its own weird thing. And you're just sitting there going, what? What happened? That's this book. And I don't say that lightly. Like, truly, I don't know everything there is to know about the chakras. I know it is a very complex system. I know that there are like hundreds of like mini chakras, that there's so many, and it's very rare we talk about them. where I think it was like your hands had like so many, each one had its own different thing, and like it can get really complex. And I know that the culture that it comes from plays a huge part into it, and there is a lot to the chakras that here in the West, here in neo-paganism, we don't always look very deep into all of that. We kind of take the basics. We go, cool, 7 chakras, dig it. And that is the end of the story. But like, this just is like a bastardized edition of looking at the chakras. Again, it really doesn't follow, it pigeonholes it. I mean, the root chakra, for instance. This is such a side tangent. Obviously, you can always tell when I hate a book because I talk about it forever and I go on so many tangents. But looking at the root chakra, the only emphasis is that you are a leader and you're like a freaking micromanaging leader. Sure, that could be a part of it. But there's also like a lot other parts to the root chakra. A whole lot. Like, the root chakra is like surviving, you know? That's a kind of key component, but it's not really emphasized. And instead, you're just an overbearing leader and you always have to take charge. And it pigeonholes them way down, and like some of them weren't, like me and my husband were looking at this book and we were arguing with the book because it's like, again, we're not chakra experts. However, we have been witches for over a decade each. So we do have some validity. And like also, I've read a lot of these books. So like, I feel a little bit justified in arguing with this author. And again, the fact that she argues with everyone and has such a fragile ego, I'm sure it's because she actually hasn't done a whole lot of actual research. And again, it's just the whole thing. But anyways, so really, this book, it goes against everything that like you would think of for the chakras. And everything that, like, again, your basics on learning the chakras, it just goes against it. Because why? No reason really listed. The author just decides. And if you want to learn more, you got to pay her money. And that is just the tackiest, cringiest thing. I think it actually might take #1 worst book of the year for that alone. Because the content is also really not that great. But again, I could have left it at like, it's just not good. But the fact that the author is just so aggressive in the review spaces, it just gives you the biggest ick. And like, once you start that, you can dive deeper and be like, you know what, actually, if you want to go there, let's go there. Because like, again, I admit I am not a master on the chakras. But even when in my own books, I will talk about the chakras, I tell you where I got the information. Pretty much every book does that. Again, not all, but it is the majority. It is the standard. It is not mandatory, but it is standard in these spaces. As an author, whether you are, again, indie, meaning you are self-published, like me, or you are traditionally published through, like, Llewellyn, or Wiser, or Moon Books, like, whether you have a big name behind you or it's just you yourself and Amazon going through it, like, industry standard for this community is to post your sources, and the author doesn't. So needless to say, I absolutely did not like this book at all. I think it's one of the worst books I have read. And again, specifically, really, once you dive into the reviews, like, absolutely not. So I would love to know your thoughts, your recommended books for the chakras. So if you are not normally one of my viewers and you're like, oh my God, and you need some resources, hopefully some of my lovely regulars will leave their recommended books or blogs or videos for you to actually learn about the chakras. Because again, this is not it. This is just, don't do it. It's personality quiz, a glorified personality quiz with a bastardized edition of the chakras. I have officially hit my phone's max on space from ranting about this book. So I'm gonna end my rant probably mid-rant because it cut off at some point. So anyways, this book sucked. But yeah, so I would love to know in the comments down below your thoughts. Support me on Patreon, patreon.com/nightwillowcrafts. We talk about other books, and my books are available, the audiobooks, and then just kind of what I'm studying and stuff. as well. So check it out if you want to, linked down below. And like I said, I post every single day. And for the rest of the year, we're going to be talking about a wrap-up of all of the books for this year. So make sure to be subscribed so you don't miss it. And until tomorrow, thank you so much for coming along for this very long, ranty video. And I will see you all tomorrow. Blessed be.